Tonight on the Black Channel, a legend, an icon. We go over the lessons of the life of Dr. King and where we're taking them today. The Black Channel is live. Unapologetic, unadulterated, and absolutely uncompromising. Greetings, brothers and sisters from around the world, and welcome back to the home, the haven, the stronghold, the everlasting superfortress of intelligent black thought. We are the Black Media, and this is the Black Channel, and I am the Black Authority. And you are listening live to the only historically black college and university of higher education and learning in the cosmos. Join us. And join us you shall, because on tonight's program here, as always, as has become a tradition here at the Black Channel, as has become a tradition now that spans going on over a decade and a half, while everyone else is looking to take a day off, we put truth to the words that black empowerment does not take a holiday. We do not look for opportunities to take time off. We look for opportunities to show and demonstrate our dedication and commitment to this cause, which is not just a cause, it's a way of life. And whenever the rest of society says they have a holiday, we demonstrate to them, you go and sit down over there. We will be continuing the work. And I want to take a moment here tonight to talk about Dr. King and one of the biggest lessons that we have learned as a result of that. Dr. King is an example of progress. Dr. King is an example of what can be done and what gets accomplished, while other people are sitting around talking about what can't get done. I want you all to understand something. Literally nothing we have done, nowhere we are today, nothing we have accomplished, nothing you see in your life today, nothing that you have around you is a result of people saying, yep, that's going to happen. Every single thing is a result of people saying that will never occur. That's the first lesson I need you to understand. Everything that you have today is a result of defying the attitude that that will never occur. They said that we would never be allowed to learn how to read, how to write. We would never be given self-direction, self-determination. They said that we would never be freed from chattel slavery. We would never be recognized as full human beings, that we don't have the ability to build an economy, build into society. We certainly would never be able to outdo anyone at anything. And take a look at where we are now. Of course, we are not where we are supposed to be, but that is a condition of history and a result of being a people being oppressed and in a war zone. So that is a given. That's not a revelation. That is an observance of the obvious. You take a look at all of those things. They said that we would never be able to get nationally recognized. They said that we would not be an influential power. They said that we wouldn't determine America's direction. They've said so many things. And we've had to remind them over and over again that this is not a sprint, it is a marathon, and we are not going anywhere except where we're supposed to be going. That is the only place that we'll be going, and that is all. There are a lot of people who are hoping otherwise. One of the biggest things is that in our generation, we have overturned something. You all usually hear me play a sound snippet sometimes when people say certain things.
Nigga, please.
That is Isabel Sanford from the sitcom The Jeffersons. The Jeffersons were an outgrowth of the civil rights movement. Those TV shows put out by Norman Lear and the networks, but the Jeffersons was an outgrowth of that, a direct outgrowth of that. The Jeffersons and later Good Times, and later some other ones, but those two are really the big major ones. And that is important. It is important because you didn't have that happen because what was happening to us was inconsequential. That was a direct result of us moving what was happening to us, even though we were less than 15% of the population, moving that to the front burner and front and center to the point that it had to become a normal staple of American life. It had to become a normal staple of American life. That we made ourselves the topic of conversation. That has been our culture and our cultural legacy. But one of the other things is that whereas earlier generations attempted to appeal to the dominant society and get them to recognize these things, and then the dominant society would put their little spin on it, you all have to understand that coming out of the 1960s, they understood that revolution was in the air. The Black Panthers were on the march, and you had a people who had nothing to lose. Revolution was in the air, and they were very, very concerned about that. So they went to work immediately. Congressional hearings and television, they went to work immediately to rewrite the history of the 1960s. And they created a Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. who did not actually exist. They took one or two sentences, cherry-picked one or two things that served their interests, that on their face seemingly were promoting ours, but in reality, they cherry-picked the things that Dr. King said that they could twist and reshape into begging. And that is the image of Dr. King that was sold to us after that, was that the road forward is to pray and protest and beg, but you will demand nothing, that you are here to implore to the angels of their better nature. But the bottom line is they cherry-picked the one or two sentences, not color of your skin, but content of your character and non-violence. They cherry-picked those two things, and that was the image that they rewrote him and remolded him into. And the civil rights generation, in their avaricious greed, yes, I will call it for what it was and what it is, in their overwhelming desire to sit down in comfort, they allowed that to occur with absolutely no regard for how this would poison and contaminate the future generations. The civil rights generation was happy to have interracial sexual access, interracial social access, interracial consumer access, and that was all they wanted. The actual mission of power, wealth, influence, and empowerment and control of our own destiny, that was the dream of the people who left the plantations and built the Black Wall Streets around America. You'll notice the civil rights generation completely abandoned that, and then spent the remainder of their lives seeking acknowledgement and a pat on the head and recognition, which is why they came with their ridiculous obsession with titles. I was the first Negro in the military. I was the first Negro at this job. I was the first manager at this plant. I was the first black school superintendent. A never-ending campaign chasing titles, which was really just getting acknowledgement. And that became their sole purpose for living. And they allowed that to go on because, well, we're going to go get ours. Never mind if it sells out the children and the grandchildren. And in the process, they allowed the bastardization and complete mutation of Dr. King into something that never existed, to the point that entire parts of that man's life were completely discarded, and it fell to we, starting in Generation X, and has been carried on since then, who began the work of reconstructing Dr. King's life, not allowing anyone to tell us what he was. We sat there and demanded, wait a minute, let me hear it for myself. And that's when you started realizing, I'll be damned, there are whole speeches, interviews, commentaries that the media hasn't mentioned. How did you end up leaving out all of these? And that's when you realize that the bastards went to work immediately to completely destroy and distort the image of Dr. King and turn him into a tool of propaganda, which would tell the children, now don't get upset, don't get excited when bad things happen to you, do not revolt, pray, and just hope that we in the dominant society don't kick your ass too bad and don't violate your rights too much. That's the way you should approach everything. Then they went to work propping up political puppets and whores. I said it. They went and grabbed Jesse Jackson. Well, wasn't he there with Dr. King? Don't you Negroes revere Dr. King? Well, Jesse was there. Jesse, who was not a revolutionary. Jesse, who was looking for political payoff, and he got it. John Lewis, the little mumble mouth nigga. I said it!
And deal with it, nigga!
The little mush mouth, mumble mouth nigga that today, there's a reason why the Benjamin Crumps can't lead nothing today. He can chase every ambulance in New York and Alabama, but John Lewis, the moment he sits there, open his mouth talking like dumb Donald, the rest of us say, okay, that's enough from you. But amazingly, that guy of all people was plucked by the Democrat Party. Yo, this'll be a good one for you. And you start noticing that became a trend and a pattern. They grabbed the dumbest and densest, and then the whites of the Democrat Party said, this'll be your leadership. And what do you know? They grabbed individuals whose only claim to fame and their only accomplishment was bowing and scraping and bragging about how many knots they got knocked upside their heads with, to tell the rest of us that was the way to go. To tell us that was the way to go. But we went digging into people. We went digging into Malcolm X. We went digging into Huey Newton. And we went digging into Dr. King. And over the course of the last 2 decades, we have reclaimed the image of Dr. King. He is no longer considered to be the guy talking about go ahead and love your enemies, and if you get brutalized, well, that's just the way you're supposed to be. We have reclaimed that image, and you will notice something. Have you all noticed how the news media and folks don't talk about Dr. King anymore? Have you noticed that? What? Have you noticed that they don't really talk him up like they used to? Why, it used to be coming up on MLK Day. They'd have their documentaries and their news pieces and all that, and they would love to play the March on Washington. Why, they used to love doing that. Have you noticed they don't do that anymore? Oh, man. Have you noticed that over the course of the last 1 or 2 decades? Why, they've done just backed off of that altogether. What changed? What happened? Something must have happened. Something must have changed. Why'd they stop doing what they had been doing for decades? What occurred? I'll tell you what occurred. What occurred is that now the people are awake. Now, if they say Dr. King's name and attempt to pass off their contaminated, mutated version of it, it gets discarded. So you see Dr. King, their distorted mutation of him is no longer useful. So they've had to discard that because that doesn't work anymore. That's the problem. Our generation, while they play the speech from the March on Washington, our generation reminds people about why he was going there in the first place. We remind them of why they were going there in the first place. And this is the speech that we keep reminding people of.
At the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farms. Not only that, today many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And this is what we are faced with, and this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington in this campaign, we are coming to get our check. Same time that
what he did was he wanted to make sure that he gave you a brief history lesson, because he understood that the schools were not teaching you that. These were things that actually occurred. The schools were not teaching you that. And you'll notice that ever since then, not only are they not teaching you those parts about what they did for white people in America, they are now today, under the white supremacist regime, they are now today attempting to rewrite the history altogether and say, by the way, slavery never even happened. How in the world can you be a just or humane or civilized individual, and those are the kinds of tactics you're resorting to? It is very important to entrap people's minds. So what they do is they line up a whole bunch of people and a whole bunch of names, and they tell you that these folks were incredible and fabulous and wonderful, and they never tell you the whole story. Just as they create a fictional Dr. King, they also create these fictional other people. So you drive through parts of America and you see the names of farms and plantations and businesses and industries. And then you realize that, by the way, they fabricated magnates and tycoons who did not actually exist and don't. And by the way, they are still very much in the business of doing that. Then your children will get up without this information, and the entire reason for hiding this and refusing to say that, by the way, oh, when the white immigrants came over here, we gave them everything they needed. All the stuff that we said by law you could not have, we gave it to them. They didn't build anything from the ground up. We, the foundation, we are the only people who ever built anything from the ground up. These other things are the result of what was taken and stolen. We're the only ones who had that everything we built, we actually had to earn. We actually had to earn ours. There was no one to give us land, give us resources. They refused to give that to us. You'll notice that when you go over these names of people for the Homestead Act and everything else, we're not anywhere on any of those. Now, how in the world can that be a huge chunk of American history and you keep conveniently leaving that out, Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley? How in the world can this be a gigantic piece of American history and you're leaving out a whole huge chunk of the history of the country? How is it that you just overlook that every time? And then when it's brought up to you, you don't make it a point to emphasize, oh yeah, that was, that's how things happened. Yeah. It is for the purposes of enslaving and chaining your minds and the minds of your children that you will just always have the assumption that there must be something wrong with you, that everyone else is just trying harder, and there must be something wrong with you. You're just not trying hard enough. This is why you have to be reminded of the actual facts, because they're going to wake up to you today and tell you you're not trying hard enough. And once again, this is not, as I told a caller here recently, this is not just one or two people. You could not have this system of lies and deception that is so uniform at every level of society. It couldn't possibly be so uniform if everyone wasn't working together. The society itself has to be working in conjunction and collusion. Otherwise, this wouldn't be so uniform. It doesn't matter whether you're in Florida or Portland or Michigan or Nevada. It's the same everywhere. Then you must all be colluding. You must be collaborating. It can't be uniform everywhere, and you're not doing that. So what that means is that you are perfectly aware of everything we're saying, but you have all taken an oath. We don't discuss that with the Negroes. We don't talk about that with them. That's not a conversation that we have, not with them. Don't mention it to them. Now, if they bring it up to you, you act like, oh, I didn't know that. Because if you acknowledge it, then they will be looking at you and saying, by the way, I think there's an invoice somewhere around here with your name on it. I think there's a debt around here somewhere with your name on it. Wait here for just a few moments. Let me see if I can pull that up for you. Dr. King said that we are coming to get our check because he acknowledged even then, 60 years ago, that we understood that this has not been fair. The game has always been rigged, and rigged specifically and only against us. They did not do this to the Irish immigrants, the Italian immigrants, the Asian immigrants. Damn! They didn't do this to the Latinos. They only did this to us. And to this day, they only continue that against us. We are a particular, specific target. It is in their code that everybody else can get over and get by. Not them, though. Those Negroes, no, we have a spiritual significance to them. They are our barometer of the health of white supremacy. They are our barometer of the health of white supremacy. And the barometer of the health of white supremacy is very true. Today, Donald J. Trump was inaugurated for the second time to begin his second term in office. And as I have said since the very, very beginning, this is good. What? I have been consistent, I have been persistent, and I will remain so. This is good. This is good because what it does is it emboldens them, and by emboldening them, it smokes out all the rats. It smokes out all the rats, and that's exactly what we want. We want all the rats to be smoked out. We want them all to be emboldened. And I don't want them to be emboldened in 5 or 10 years. I want them all to come out from the very beginning. Teeth bared, fur flying, and white supremacy waving. That's what I want. Because history has taught us that black people are looking for an opportunity to sit down and ignore things. So white supremacy must remain front and center in order for our people to remain vigilant and mobilized. In case anybody was wondering, Elon Musk is making headlines here now. He's making headlines here now. You can see for yourself.
For making it happen. Thank you. And I just want to say thank you for making it happen. Thank you.
Now, as you all can probably predict, the white supremacists and suspected white supremacists around the country and around the world are splaining at a furious lightning pace that we're white and we say so, and that what you clearly see in front of you is not actually what you see. They are literally telling people that what you see in front of you, that is not what you actually see. Not at all. That's what they're telling folk right now, that what you clearly see, that is not what you clearly see. Not at all. What we have said, what this microphone has said now going on 2 decades about Elon Musk, we have always pointed out his Africana roots. We have never let it go. Long before his racism came to the fore, long before the so-called white liberals who covered for him for years, never forget that. CBS, ABC, Washington Post, New York Times, he was their golden boy. While we were pointing out his Africana roots, they were cheering for him and defending him and promoting him every step of the way. It was only once he became politically disaligned to them that all of a sudden, oh, you know, he's bad people over there. Shut your ass up. He was great people before now. He bought Twitter and then he became the devil. Then he had horns out of his head. We said he was the devil the whole damn time. But your corporate outlets never backed that play while they were telling us to sit down and shut up. He's great. And now you went ahead and you empowered him so much that this is the extent he's taking things to now, and you empowered him this much. You've let the devil out of his hole. And now he's rampaging across the countryside. And there will be nothing you can do about this, not now. The Ben Shapiros and a lot of Jewish society that was backing him. Well, he doesn't like black folk, that's great. By the way, I said this before the election, remember? I said it before the election, I said it after the election. I said, by the way, Jewish white supremacists like Ben Shapiro, y'all got another thought coming. Have you considered the dude that you boosted and empowering here? Have you considered that? They didn't think it over because they never think it over. They are childlike. They never think it over. They never do. Well, now they don't have to worry about it because it's a done deal. And there it is. And there it is. In the chat room, Rockman Alston, very glad that you weighed in on that. Very glad that you weighed in on that. Let me go ahead and get you the Zoom link up here, sir. so that we can make sure that you'll have an opportunity to speak to everyone. Very glad that you've gone ahead and brought that up. So let me go ahead and get Mr. Rahman up here. He has a few words that he would like to share with us all, and we certainly don't want him to be relegated to the chat room. So he needs to be where everyone can see him. So there's the link to the Zoom in the chat room there, sir. I'll go ahead and pin that to the top of the chat. You have 2 minutes to be on Zoom, or we'll just assume you're trolling in permanent vacation. But certainly since you said that now, you certainly want people to hear everything you have to say. So let's go ahead and get you front and center here and get a microphone in your hands for you so you can go ahead and speak to the people. Since you wanted to be heard, I will make sure you are now heard. So we'll go ahead and give him 2 minutes for that. And while we are waiting, yes, Elon Musk and some of the other white supremacists out there, they have been emboldened. And that is exactly what we want. We want them to be emboldened. We want that. We want for them to do that. We want for them to get too cocky, too arrogant, to say too much. We want them out in the open. This is what I have always wanted. I want them to come on out and say it with their chest. In Elon Musk's case, he literally just did that, by the way. Literally with his chest. Little bird chest, but literally. This is exactly what I wanted. This is exactly it. Because this is exactly what we need. It makes the terms of discussion very black and white. There are very clear good guys and very clear bad guys. In the chat room there, Rahman, you have 2 minutes to be on. Let's make sure you don't use the chat room anymore here. So you can't use the chat anymore. So you have a couple of minutes to be on Zoom or permanent vacation. And this is the great thing about being the new black media in the 21st century. If individuals are ignorant, boneheaded, slow bus kids, obviously uninformed, unintelligent, we give you an opportunity to put a microphone in their hands and you can hear them speak for yourselves, and then you can decide whether or not that person seems very competent. Something that up until now couldn't be done. Now we have an opportunity to do that. I am glad that Elon Musk has been emboldened. I am glad that so many others have been emboldened. And I want them to continue to do so. I want them to continue to do so. That's important to me. I want them to. I want all of them to do that. All of them. In the chat room, in the ghetto needs to be on Zoom. We'll give you 2 minutes to be there. In the ghetto on the chat room needs to be on Zoom. You got 2 minutes to be on Zoom. So glad we have so many individuals here tonight who are so spirited in the discussion. So glad that we have that. By the way, Mr. Alston has not made his way on Zoom just yet. So he's had more than 2 minutes now to be on Zoom. So since Mr. Alston has apparently declined our generous offer to have a two-way dialogue, we will give him a one-way ticket. So we'll just go ahead and remove him. In the ghetto can be next for that. In the ghetto can be next. I got somebody who's popped up here on Zoom. We'll see if we can get them up here on Zoom. Let's go ahead and see if we can get them on Zoom up here. If you're on Zoom, make sure you have your camera and your microphone turned on. Anyone who does not have their camera and microphone turned on will not be allowed. Pointing up at the ceiling, you have only a couple of seconds here. By the way, let me take a few screenshots because we want to make sure that we got that available. Wouldn't want anyone to lose that. All right, we've got Eve here on Zoom. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Am I muted?
Yes, you are. What is on your mind?
I was listening to the conversation, just trying to get some education on things.
Okay, why are you on Zoom then?
I thought I was supposed to hook on Zoom so I could hear the conversations.
Okay, did I ask you to call in?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, what I want you to do then is just put the Hennessy back down. Somebody come get their grandma and put the Hennessy back down. Yes, sir. They old, they lonely, they looking for somebody to hang out with. So it's just, trust me, I'm bad company. I just seem like a entertaining voice. I'm actually rather bad company, ma'am. So go back down to the bingo hall and see if one of the old other retirees will kick it with you. Trust me, you don't want to be on this phone wrangling with me for no real length of time. It just seemed like a good idea. I'm not them old drunk niggas down there at the pub y'all argue with. It's a whole different thing over here. All right, let's get back over here on Zoom. I got Dab on Zoom. Dab, what's on your mind?
Hey, Jason Black, how you doing, man? I just wanted to top in. It's an interesting time. It made me think of two things. Last year, I went home to Trinidad just for like a week or so. And the first thing my uncle said, he also lives there, well, he lives there full time. He said to me, he's like, well, you got to vote you have to vote for Kamala, right? And I'm like, why? She's not black. She's Indian. He's also mixed with Indian. And it really kind of dawned on me then when he said that the Democrats here was really trying to pull that old colonialism trick, with colorism and that type of politics rather than trying to offer tangibles. So that made me that really just kind of stuck into my head, and it what this discussion made me think about that. And then the other thing that it made me think about was I'm currently right now, as you can see, I'm a truck driver. I'm currently in Spartanburg, home of one of the big BMW plants down around the corner. And last week Monday, I went to a shipper to pick up a load, and I'm speaking to the lady that I normally speak to, and this white guy, he's air hustling, and he comes up to the window and he says to me, he said, "Hey, which highway did you drive on from Jamaica to come here?" And almost immediately I said to him, "The same highway that you took to when you came from Europe." And that's the second time that's happened to me. And I would say in the past 3 to 4 years. That also happened to me back in Aberdeen, Maryland, when I was at a park taking pictures of some bald eagles over there. And the guy said something similar to me. He said, "How long of a swim was it for me to come from Jamaica?" I said, "Well, not as long as the swim that you took from Europe." And I'm saying all that to say that these white supremacists are really, really emboldened now.
Well, I mean, let's do a checklist here. First of all, in both of those incidents, were you alone or were you with somebody else?
I was with the first one in about 3 years ago in Aberdeen, Maryland, was just my wife and myself. But I had my Kit Kat on me, even though I had my big camera bag and whatnot. I was in a park. It was probably about 3-4 p.m. The light was starting to kind of get dim. But I mean, like I said, I had my Kit Kat with me. I don't travel without it.
Right. My thing is though that for them to be that bold, what that usually happens, they try to catch you when you're by yourself.
Yes.
If you start recording them, they'll swear to God they didn't say anything, or just the Negro, he just started beating the hell out of me here. I don't know what happened here. I was just standing here at the park, and so that's the kind of thing that goes on. But certainly that's what we want. We want them to be emboldened. I prefer my white supremacists honest. I want them to be emboldened. They're showing their fear. They're showing their intimidation. And that's exactly what we want. You want them to get bold. You want them to start saying things they shouldn't say. Because remember, the power of white supremacy is when it's hidden. This shows you how absolutely undisciplined and idiotic the current generation is. Their fathers taught them. You don't speak on it. You don't display it. You don't expose it. When you expose white supremacy, you give the Negroes a clear target to go after. You just put a bullseye on yourself. You're supposed to have plausible deniability. You're supposed to slip here. You got to speak in code. When you sit up and make it so damn blatant, now you've exposed yourself. You can't be used to protect the system anymore because you exposed yourself. And that's what happens. So it's good when they jump out there and do that. It's good when they show themselves. I just want you all to understand the circumstances under which they do it. Usually if you're by yourselves, make sure that you're prepared for any and every situation. But do not be deceived. They are very much still out there. They're looking for opportunities. These are cowardly criminals of opportunity. And every once in a while, they're going to try something. But if you're prepared, the most they'll be able to do is say something salty. And then you say, what was that? All of a sudden, they'll get quiet. So why don't you repeat that? Repeat that one more time. I didn't quite hear you. Yeah. Next thing you know, it gets a whole lot quieter than it was. I'll let you have the last word.
Yeah, and Jason, when I got tapped into your content about, gosh, it has to be about 6 years now. You inspired me to hit the country by road. My wife and I, we live in an RV, and we went ahead and we traveled the country and whatnot. But I've had racist sentiments expressed to me in Oregon, in Washington, Barstow, California, just various, places. And I had to be ready with the comeback. But it wasn't just a matter of having some slick to say, but like you always put it, don't leave home without your Kit Kat. Stay ready. And even when the first time I heard you talk about, having a Kit Kat and candy fetish or whatnot, I'm like, man, I'm out here just, kind of raw dogging it. I need to be protected. I don't want to be a soft target. And that really everything just kind of fell in line because it was right after I tapped into Dr. Cresswell's thing and made me really understand, racism, Dr. Neely Fuller or whatnot. So it wasn't happenstance that I felt, I found the content and it made me realize that I have to,
you have to stay vigilant. White supremacy is global. Yeah. It is everywhere. Yeah. They're not wearing T-shirts, but if we can make them bold enough, they might as well be wearing one. Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. Barstow, California is like Mansfield, Louisiana, for anybody who's never been there. The whole state of California, Los Angeles, San Diego, San Francisco, Oakland, those are like islands. Everywhere else has much more in common with the southern United States than it does with your idea of fun and sun in California. So you talk about places like Barstow and Stockton, things like that. It's got a lot more in common with Louisiana than it does with your average idea about California. Speaking of which, there's something else I want to go ahead and discuss with you all here tonight. Something else I want to discuss with you all here tonight because this is critical and crucial and key to the lessons of Dr. King for us going forward here. And I'm so glad that Elon Musk has decided to jump front and center. So glad that he's decided to do that because there was a reason that Dr. King told them that we were coming to get our check. White supremacy, as I've taught you all going on 2 decades now, white supremacy depends on its economy. They don't get their economy for the purposes of just balling out. They get their economy because it is critical to maintain power. And Elon Musk has become the epitome of that in so many different ways. By the way, at Trump's inauguration today, it was a murderer's row of the richest people in the world sitting up there. Jeff Bezos is on deck. Mark Zuckerberg's on deck. Elon Musk is on deck. Dana White's on deck. All that white supremacist money that's been compiled for all this time. All this white supremacist money. Say No More in the chat room. Say No More needs to give us a call up on Zoom. We'll give Say No More 2 minutes here. By the way, we have not heard from Rockman or In the Ghetto. Say No More needs to give us a call up on Zoom here. You have 2 minutes, Say No More. And by the way, I'll make sure you say nothing else in the meantime. Say No More has 2 minutes to go ahead and be up here on Zoom. So let's go ahead and get Say No More up here, since they have indicated that they would like to get more information. There's a lot to be learned here, and there's a lot that we've been trying to teach you and prepare you to learn. And since Elon Musk has gone out of his way to make sure that he's the topic of conversation, and he's gone out of his way to make sure that you're talking about him and noticing him, I just thought I would take an opportunity to remind people I've been talking about Elon Musk for quite a long time now, but one thing in particular, he didn't get where he is by accident. He got there because of white privilege on a level and on a scale that is simply denied everyone else. Never mind the fact of what he was given in South Africa. Never mind that. Never mind what he was given in South Africa. In the chat room, Trouser Snake needs to give us a call on Zoom. So you got 2 minutes to be on Zoom there. Thank you very much. Let's make sure that they give us a call up as well. So you got 2 minutes to be here on Zoom as well. Let me go ahead and remind you all now. This is from CNN. Now that they have a burr in their saddle, and they've got a axe to grind with Elon Musk, all of a sudden they're bringing up what I talked about years ago. How the hell is it that Jason Black talked about this years ago and CNN didn't think that it was worth discussing? And yet once they have some sort of grudge against him, all of a sudden, oh, wait a minute, now we can talk about this. I talked about this years ago, because how do you buy an election? White privilege has never been based on hard work or innovation. They give you a multinational company, and then you sit up here and tell the world you built one. That's obviously not what it is. Now remember, this was from November. So just 2 months ago. Why wasn't CNN saying this a decade ago? Oh, wait a minute. They were looking to be on Elon's good side back then. They talk about government crucial to Musk's net worth. It's worthwhile to ask just how much of his world-leading net worth comes from government help over the last 10 to 15 years. The answer is not simple. It's very, very simple. They're still lying for him. By some measures, little of his wealth is thanks to taxpayers. Musk is worth an estimated $326 billion. According to Bloomberg's real-time billionaire tracker, his companies have received, quote, only tens of billions from government contracts and programs. That's not telling you the story. Where's your seed money, the beginning money? Because if you don't get enough money at the beginning, you never get to the 326. If you don't get 10 billion up front, you don't get to the 300 billion. So if I don't give you the 3 million, you'll never get to the 300 billion. That's the point. If I don't give you the 3 million up front, way more than I would give them Negroes. If I don't give you that up front, you don't get to the 300 billion if I don't give you the 3 million. That's the point. They're going to say here that in other ways, virtually all of his net worth can be pinned to government help. Tesla and SpaceX got started and survived their early days with assistance from state and federal policies, government contracts, and loans. The foundation for Musk's financial success has been the U.S. government, said Daniel Eves, tech analyst for Wedbush Securities. And the value of Tesla and SpaceX doesn't come from their profits so far. Instead, their value comes from investments in their future worth, such as Tesla's publicly traded stock and private funding rounds for SpaceX. Since Trump's election, Musk's net worth has increased $64 billion, or nearly 25%. Damn! According to Bloomberg's estimates, people, $64 billion. Now, this was in November, so just in a couple of weeks. In just a couple of weeks after Trump's election, his worth goes up $64 billion. Do you realize what a world-class brain damage ignoramus you'd have to be to go broke or lose something if I give you a $64 billion head start? How much genius do you need to have if I give you a $64 billion head start or a $64 billion bonus? With somebody acting as if there's some genius or some brain trusted work. Which one of us couldn't make a world leading company if I gave you a $64 billion bonus? At your job, they give you a $200 bonus, and they're acting like they've done something huge. You give somebody a $64 billion bonus in 2 weeks? How the hell do you... We should beat your ass if you're not leading the world economically. If I spot you $64 billion. This is partly based on the assumption that the future growth will be easier, with Musk offering advice on topics including artificial intelligence. He is not an expert on artificial intelligence, self-driving vehicles, and funding for agencies that have given his companies regulatory trouble. Tesla's early survival now, just like what Dr. King was saying. If we don't discuss where these folks started, they'll have you believing that they pulled off some economic miracle, or that they did something super fantastic, or that they were just world-leading geniuses who had some knack or talent for innovation that you just were too slow and silly and just couldn't understand. That's what they would have you believe. And it's a lie. It was a lie in Jamestown. It was a lie in Philadelphia. It was a lie in Mississippi. And it's a lie today. And the lies continue. Tesla has received relatively modest government contracts in the past, but it got a lot of help getting started. Critical help. Folks, that's the part that matters. The whole point is getting you to a point where you're viable and can stand on your own. So the investment you get from the beginning will determine if you ever survive. So that's the only part that really counts. How much do you have at the beginning? Because that will be the single biggest indicator of whether or not you're going to make it. If I can starve you at the beginning, you'll never get off the ground. What have they done to black folk here in America? What have they done to us since the plantations? They starved us economically to make sure you never even get off the ground. And what do you know? They call it generational poverty. In reality, it's generational white supremacy. They make sure you don't get anything to start, because if I can make sure that you never get anything to start, you ain't going nowhere. So what you receive at the beginning, when the government gives white immigrants free land, free money, free education, free health care, what are they doing for the illegals they're bringing over here now? That's what will determine your future viability. Then when we show up, they tell us you looking for a handout, talking about reparations and cut the check. Well, let's see about Elon Musk. Did they cut the check for him? In January 2010, 15 years ago, folks, in January of 2010, Tesla was starting out and had sold less than 2,000 cars in its history. Then the company received a $465 million. Damn! A $465 million low-interest loan. Folks, they didn't just get a $465 million loan. They got a $465 million low-interest loan. A low-interest loan. Talk about favorable. Talk about favorable. How many of you couldn't build a multinational, multi-billion-dollar company if I spot you damn near $500 million to start? How many of you couldn't build a multi-billion-dollar company if I spot you $500 million in your early days? Who the hell couldn't do it if you spot him that? That's not genius. He didn't start from the ground up. Y'all took him up at 30,000 feet and told him, here, let me help show you how to glide. $465 million is a major corporation. How can you not become a multinational corporation if I start you off as a major corporation? And by the way, Ben Shapiro and Daily Wire, I can go down the list. Same thing for them. None of these folks, quote unquote, earned it. All of them were given a multinational conglomerate and then told, here, just go ahead and coast. And then they come back and tell you that they were geniuses. And then they leave out the part that, by the way, you were given a whole company. You didn't build one. You were given one. Oh, well, you see, but I've helped run it masterfully, my ass. The company received a $465 million low-interest loan from the Department of Energy months before its initial public offering. Months before its initial public offering. Do y'all understand what a signal that sends to the stock market if the government is giving you $465 million? That's guaranteed government money. Hell yeah, the market's going to be on board. With the loan, it developed its Model S car, its first major success, and paid back the loan early through proceeds from an additional sale of stock in 2013. Folks, how many of us couldn't build our own car plant with $465 million? They gave him almost $500 million to develop one car. Who the hell among us couldn't do that? Now that you hear that, if somebody gave you $500 million and said, here, engineer a car, we'll give you $500 million. Here's a bunch of car engineers, car designers. They have you believing that this man somehow was some super genius who was able to just divine this, and through hard work and sweat and equity and diligent research and technological breakthroughs, no, $500 million, here you go. Yeah, when you say it like that, it's like, oh, yeah, that's not genius. That's just whiteness. Oh, that's not genius. That's just whiteness. You know, if you did that for 5 black folk, you'd have 5 viable car companies, by the way. Just saying. As Tesla started to sell cars, a $7,500 tax credit for EV buyers allowed the company and other automakers to sell American-made EVs at a higher price than the market might have allowed otherwise. Okay, that's very deceptive to say because it says it allowed Tesla and other car makers. That's a lie because Tesla was the only one with a viable electric car at that time. And not only the federal government got behind them with that $7,500 tax credit, but the state of California, 6th largest economy in the world, they got behind it. So when you leave, they were the ones who were ponying up the money to build charging stations. So they basically went into business with Musk to subsidize him. You leave out these huge things. So when Dr. King tells you about how the immigrants from Europe were given an economic floor, they were upheld with an economic floor through which they would not fall any further. So you had their back. You went into business with the white immigrants. They came to you. They didn't have to be smart. They didn't have to make a profit. You made sure they started with a profit and just needed to remain profitable. But when we show up, all of a sudden, wait a minute, you got, what have you earned? You got to earn this. We already earned all that. But by the way, you gave a bunch of these other folk a hell of a whole lot more, and they've had a bunch of unearned benefits. Well, you know, that was different. You need to earn yours. By George, I'm not sure what you mean by George, Might need to have you call up. Let's get by George to explain that. By George needs to explain that. You got 2 minutes. So glad we have so many folk in here today, by the way, who have been very, very motivated and very, very energized here. Very, very glad we got some folks with some comments like that. So by George, let me go ahead and get by George to go ahead and give me a call up. By George needs to be on Zoom. I'd like to get some clarification on that. So by George, you got 2 minutes. Go ahead and hit me up on Zoom. The link is at the top of the chat room there. You can go ahead and click that, sit back, smile, and dial. And we'll go ahead and chop it up about that. They go on to say here that Tesla buyers receive federal tax credits worth an estimated $3.4 billion before the perk disappeared entirely for Tesla buyers at the end of 2019. Even if that only allowed Tesla to raise prices by half that amount, that's another $1.7 billion in federal help when the company was facing a cash crunch. The tax credit was restored in 2023 as part of the Biden administration's Inflation Reduction Act. But Musk has encouraged the incoming Trump administration to end the $7,500 tax credit. What? Yeah, so for those of you who didn't know, well, the company is fully matured now. So he's locking the door behind him. Now that the company is fully self-reliant and fully matured, yeah, let's make sure we kill the competition so that I'm the only game in town, and now I will remain the only game in town. So for those of you who thought that Elon Musk and Trump were going to get into it over that tax credit, Elon Musk is the one telling Trump, yeah, go ahead and cut that off. So General Motors and Volkswagen and Toyota, none of these other folk can benefit the way I did. Go ahead and chop it on off now. Go ahead and make the rest. Go ahead and put that hurdle in the way. The rest of them, I'm good. I got $64 billion in 2 weeks. I'm good. I'm good. So for anybody who was deceived or bamboozled into thinking that this was going to be a point of conflict between Musk and Trump, they already put their heads together and agreed, yeah, go ahead and dump that. Yeah, go ahead and dump that. They go on to say here that Musk has encouraged the Trump administration to end the $7,500 tax credit, which would seem to be against Tesla's interests, but would be a blow for established automakers seeking to get a share of the U.S. EV market. Those legacy automakers would have to accept bigger losses on their EV sales or pull back on offerings, which would reduce competition for Tesla. What Jason Black has said now for a decade. You don't have to have an MBA to figure this one out. I've been saying it for a decade. That they're going to pull those things, and what do you know? There it is. Locking the door behind him, and had a whole bunch of other folk deceived and fooled into thinking that this was going to be a point of contention. Financial windfall from EV regulations. Tesla's most significant financial support is not from tax credits for EV buyers. It comes from the sale of regulatory credits that other automakers buy to comply with state and federal regulations aimed at reducing greenhouse gases. The money doesn't come from taxpayers, but without the government regulation, there would be no billions flowing into Tesla's coffers and straight into its billion lines. Now, for those of you who didn't understand that, General Motors, Ford, Toyota, the companies that still make internal combustion engine cars, they're not making enough vehicles that comply with the current greenhouse regulations. But what the government's done is given them a loophole that says, well, you can purchase credit. So basically they're giving money to Tesla, and that allows them to, quote, purchase credit that they can offset their violations of the greenhouse gases. So basically, on the one hand, taxpayers are giving them money, and on the other hand, the legacy automakers are floating them. By the way, So that's what this part here means. Those credit sales literally kept Tesla's lights on and his paychecks being cashed in the company's early days. They accounted for nearly 25% of his revenue in 2008 and 10% of his revenue over the course of the next 5 years. Between 2008 and 2019, sales of regulatory credits generated more than $2 billion for the company. So folks, he was making money coming and going. These are in the early days. How many of us could not have a car company be viable when we had General Motors and Ford and Stellantis and Toyota and Volkswagen and everybody else giving us money? Who the hell couldn't make a viable car company when all the other car companies are giving you money on top of the money you got from the federal government, on top of the tax credits you got? These are not profits he was making, just other folks shoring him up. Tesla might have died without those funds. Don't take our word for it. Ask Musk himself. Quote, closest we got to bankruptcy was about a month, he said in a tweet. The Model 3 ramp was extreme stress and pain for a long time, from mid-2017 to mid-2019. Production and logistics hell. Even when the threat of bankruptcy lessened, it wasn't until 2021 that the company was able to post a profit without the help of credit sales. In Tesla's history, sales of regulatory credits have brought in nearly $11 billion, with all of it pretty much directly to its bottom line. Quote, if it didn't have regulatory credits, Tesla would not be the brand it is around the globe, and Musk wouldn't be the richest person in the world, said Eves, who is a bull on Tesla shares today. In 2019, he was still skeptical. You should remain skeptical, by the way, because if China has any say over this, the good times won't last too much longer, but we'll see. That was just Tesla. SpaceX's value depends on NASA. What? So one depends on the Department of Energy in the automotive sector. His other business is plugged into NASA. Even without his shares and options in Tesla, Musk would still likely be worth more than $100 billion and one of the richest people on the planet. SpaceX will likely be valued at about $250 billion in an upcoming round of funding from investors, Reuters said. Eve said that while SpaceX has not disclosed Musk's holdings, he estimates it's close to 50%. Taxpayer support for SpaceX comes from direct government contracts that are worth billions. According to usaspending.gov, the government database that tracks government spending, SpaceX has signed contracts worth nearly $20 billion. Damn! Folks, so Tesla, he gets spotted $500 million. For SpaceX, he's been spotted almost $20 billion. So that makes what they gave him for Tesla in the chump change. And Elon Musk is not a rocket engineer. The most critical one came just before Christmas in 2008 when SpaceX and Musk were both virtually out of cash. Now, if you were black, they would have pulled the plug and said, well, we don't need any DEI hires here. Where's Ron DeSantis and all the DEI people? Where are they at? Hey, you white supremacists online on YouTube and on Twitter. Where are you DEI folk? Because I just found a big old DEI bug over here. Where the hell y'all at? And where have you been with all this going on? Where's the so-called Jason Whitlock and all the other bootlicking coon clowns? Hey, where are you? For some strange reason, nobody can find you all when this stuff comes up. All of a sudden, nobody can find any of you. Most likely in the back of the short bus chewing crayons. That contract was worth $1.6 billion and involved flying 12 supply missions to the International Space Station. The deal allowed SpaceX to complete the Falcon 9 rocket, its main workhorse, and the Dragon capsule, said Casey Dreyer, Senior Space Policy Advisory for the Planetary Society, a public interest group advocating space flight. So just like with the Model S for Tesla, the government gave him $1.5 billion. And they used that to develop their Falcon 9. So here, take the money so you can go build a business. Quote, they were right on the edge of insolvency, Dreyer said. Elon has pointed out that moment they were on the edge, and that helped save the company. Dreyer said the ISS deal and other contracts have allowed NASA to transport U.S. astronauts without relying on Russia. SpaceX has since gotten numerous additional contracts from NASA, the military, and other government agencies. It won a $3 billion contract to develop the next vehicle to carry astronauts to the moon. And Dreyer said the company and other NASA contractors benefit from access to the agency's employees and expertise. Dreyer said that the company and other NASA contractors benefit from access to the agency's employees and expertise. They'll have you believe that they're doing this on their own. If you talk to them, they're going to tell you Elon Musk is a genius. And then you take a look at it, it's like, oh, you're not a genius. You're just white. You're a freaking goofball. You're not a genius. You're just white. That's all. You've gotten your DEI. You're not a genius. You're just white. If any of us were given the same damn thing, a lot of us probably could have done better than him. With his 11 kids by how many different people? What? Oh, I'm sorry. Did I bring it up again? Let me tell y'all something. If Elon Musk were a black male, if Elon Musk were a black male with 11 kids by 5 or 6 different women, do you think they would have gave his ass $1 million, much less $500 million? If Cam Newton wanted to start an electric car company, what? If Future wanted to start an electric car company, please. If Nick Cannon wanted to start an electric car company, and he told the Department of Energy, I got a fantastic idea. And by the way, folks, this is literally what Tesla is, for those of you who did not know or were not aware. This is literally what Tesla is. For those of you who don't know, this is all an advent of the iPhone. What? In case you didn't know, the battery pack that powers the Tesla, that powers their electric motors, is a great big gigantic cell phone battery. I mean, they got it laid out in a bunch of packs, but it's a rolling iPhone. And I'm not just talking about from a technology standpoint. I'm talking about from the battery cells. They saw what it did for the iPhone and they said, hey, this is a more viable battery source than what General Motors was using for the EV1. Folks, it's literally a rolling iPhone. They just took the iPhone and said, hey, this is a great power pack. Let's put wheels on it. That's literally what it is. Okay. So follow me. Imagine me, if you will. Nick Cannon rolls up to the Department of Energy. Hi, I'm Nick Cannon, and I am an executive for Nickelodeon. Are we lying? I'm a television executive in corporate America. Are we lying? Or is that a true statement? Hey, I'm an executive in television and media. I know a lot of people, and I've been researching making an electric car. And you know, I thought if you could scale up the battery in the iPhone, I took a look at the iPhone, and what I've decided is, you know, if you scale up that battery, why, that would be able to power the electric motors better than these lead batteries you all have had before and whatnot. This'll work. We scale up the iPhone. We put motors on the wheels and they can be powered directly from the batteries. Could you imagine that conversation? Could you imagine what they would tell you at the Department of Energy? It's like, Nick Cannon came in here today. You mean the guy with 20 or 30 kids? Yeah, that one. And, yeah, he said, catch this, if we scale up the iPhone battery, oh God, you can make a car out of it. This is what happens when you let those DEI people in here. This is what happens. Okay, well, that's literally what Elon Musk did. I'm telling you, that's literally what Musk did. He came walking in there with his 11 kids, by how many different women, and said, hey, I need you to pony up 465 million of them things so I can get this car company popping. And they said, will you take it in cash, check, or money order? And he's just one among many. By the way, he's just one among many. And they would have you sitting up here believing that this is some interplanetary genius and that he built it from scratch and that they've been slowly but surely making sure they had everything in the way they needed. They would have you believing that he's overcome every obstacle and everything was just fine. When you take a look at the stories like, I'll be damned, this is everything that we've been saying they need to do for us. This is everything they need to do for us. Don't believe me. Don't believe me at all. People, I want y'all to think about this for a few moments. If Elon Musk has received somewhere in the neighborhood of what, $40 billion in government aid, you realize that's like 4,000 black folk that you could give $1 million to. What? He had access to the engineers at NASA. He had access to rocket engineers at NASA. He had access to NASA's government agency. If I gave you a couple of $1 million and access to those engineers, what the hell could you do? If I just gave you $1 million, not 400, if I just gave you one. They gave him billions and continue to give him billions. And then on top of that, they give him land. Ain't that right, California and Texas? And they give him equipment. And they give him tax breaks and tax credits. All the things that Dr. King talked about decades ago that were done for the white immigrants in the 19th century. Well, what do you know? They continue doing it today. But when you and me show up, they say, hey, y'all just looking for a handout. We can't do that. What? That would bankrupt the country. We can't do that. Why, the money would become worthless. You can't flood the market. We can't do, the government can't afford it. And if we did it, it'd be calamity. And yet when Elon Musk shows up, they tell you, oh, everything's great. Everything's fine. Wonderful entrepreneur. Yeah. Oh yeah. Genius, don't you know? When we show up, they plead poverty. They tell you about hyperinflation. When he shows up, they stand and applaud. This is the part of Dr. King's story and Dr. King's legacy. Does it make sense now why they hid it? Does it make sense now why they hid it? Does it make sense? There's a reason for that. Because when you start putting these things together and start having these conversations, that tells you a lot. When you start putting these things together and start making these connections, we're not talking about color of your skin and content of your character. When you start, it's like, hey, Dr. King talked about this decades ago. Then you check into it. Was that real? Damn, that was real. That really actually did happen. Well, then you start coming back and then you start taking a look at Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, and you start seeing, oh, I'll be damned. It continues to this day. It continues to this day. So if you are going to combat this, you need to know what it is exactly you're fighting for and standing on. And when you talk to these people, including government officials, folk online, when you pull this kind of stuff out right here, they can't argue with it. When you got all your facts lined up, folks, when you say, okay, this is our justification for it, this is what substantiates it, because by the way, y'all already got yours. You got yours decades ago. No, you didn't earn a damn thing. When you pull that out, next thing you know, folks get real quiet. They just have to resort to, I'm white and I say so. No wonder they lied about Dr. King. No wonder they lied about what he said. No wonder they've corrupted it and tried to confuse people. No wonder they've hidden what he said, because this demands a different conversation. This demands a completely different conversation to have. When you hear him saying what we're saying today, and then he gives a substantiation for it to say, by the way, the society you see around you, do you realize that they were given all that? Man, that's conspiracy theory. That's the problem. You Negro don't want to work here. Why if that be too big? White folk did just get given everything. No, I can actually show you. Yeah, they did. Yeah, it was given. It sure was. Well, that's in the national interest. Oh, I'm sorry. Not only were they given what they have, they've also been systematically, repeatedly, routinely stealing and taking what we have. By the way, not only have they given white society what they have also systemically, repeatedly, routinely stolen what we have and given it to white society. Shout out Bruce's Beach, the Black Wall Streets, the Highway Act. I can go down the list. Seneca Village. You do not have a list of stories like that in white society or Asian society. Please remember that, y'all. The Black Wall Streets were militarily and terroristically destroyed. The Chinatowns are still there. What? Oh, am I going to go ahead and just tell the whole story? Your Black Wall Streets and your black business districts were militaristically and terroristically destroyed at government instruction. Your Chinatowns are still there. Now, isn't that interesting? Don't tell me about how other folk been treated. Your Chinatowns are still there. Your Jewish districts are still there. Nobody came along. I don't give a damn how many so-called Nazis you say you have in America. Isn't it interesting? The only property that was destroyed was ours. There is no equivalent to the destruction of the Black Wall Streets. And once again, folks, that was not just in Oklahoma. All across this country, people. All across this nation. You got a Black Wall Street in half the states that have sizable black communities. Every state that had a sizable black community, all of the former slave states, and a bunch of them that were not slave states. Ain't that right, allegedly Oklahoma? And yet, we did that everywhere we went. Now, isn't that interesting? We did that everywhere we went. We set it up on our own, and we didn't just succeed, we excelled. Now, isn't that interesting? But when they come back and tell the tale today, they completely omit all of that. Well, of course, you're in a race war. But the building Black Wall Streets and prosperous black business districts was something we did all across this country wherever our foot touched ground. And that had to be militaristically destroyed in every single area. They went place by place, targeting them and destroying them. Now, the Chinatowns were allowed to remain. And they have been allowed to remain to this day. Where they set up their Chinatowns, they've been left alone. So much so to the point that half of the businesses in the Italian market in Philadelphia are owned by Asians. I should know. I've been there. Christian, Montrose. I should know. I've been there. My folks in Philadelphia will testify. Why you left the age, they already got Chinatown in Philadelphia. They got Chinatown in Philadelphia there by the sports arena. Where they got that janky Hilton Garden Inn. Round the corner, up the block from the Parkade. My folks in Philadelphia know what the Parkade is. Yeah, Jason is naming your streets because I need to do this so that folks understand I'm not guessing my way through this. I'm telling you what I have seen with my own two eyes. I'm not making it up as I go along. My folks in Philadelphia will bear me witness. Philadelphia has a sizable Chinatown right there in the middle of things. And yet, they still got them buying up stuff. They're encroaching where the Italians are. And you have a big old mural of former Mayor Rizzo. White supremacist arch-fiend he was. And yet, half of that stuff they got over there, the Asians are taking over those businesses. You know what you never hear? You never hear the stories of the bombings of the Chinatowns. Now, that's what you don't hear. You don't hear the stories about the bombings of the Chinatowns in San Francisco, in Philadelphia, in New York, Chicago, D.C. No stories of that. Now, how can that be? Explain to me how that mathematically is possible. If this was all about minorities, and yet black folk who had built their own enclaves, and everywhere we went, terrorism followed us, and yet they're giving the funds to the Elon Musks? No, we are not demanding a handout. As Dr. King said, we are coming to get our check. We are not going to pretend that you didn't steal anything from us and that you continue to steal it. How the hell is Elon Musk more worthy than anybody else? He already had money. How the hell is it he needs more? Shouldn't you be investing that with folk who don't have the resources he does? Elon Musk should be able to go to the private sector. That's what you keep telling us. Why doesn't Elon Musk go to the private sector? Why does he get gigantic mountains of money from, quote, the government, which is us? And then when we show up, you tell us, we need to check your paperwork and check your tax credits and see if we can check, your credit score and whatnot. But for Elon Musk, well, he's already got a couple of billion. Yeah, let's give him a few billion more. Let's go ahead and do that. That'll work. That'll work. Recognize when they're playing a mind trick here. Recognize why it is that what we have said has changed. Recognize why what we have said has altered. Well, we're not playing that game anymore, that we're going to pretend that we don't see that. We see exactly what you've done. We see exactly what you did. Need I remind you all one more time? That's just the beginning, because the beat rolls on. In Alabama, your Mercedes plant, and anywhere else where you have a General Motors plant, a Honda plant, Volkswagen plant, Toyota plant, it's the same thing for all of them. They don't pay anything to set up those plants. Those plants are basically subsidized by the state and federal government to be put in your area. And it's going to get even bigger. The so-called CHIPS Act, they're spending, that's going to end up being hundreds of billions of dollars being given to Intel and other companies, including TSMC, by the way, so that they can set up their semiconductor fabs here in the States. Because God forbid, should the richest companies on the planet actually pay to set up their own buildings. So in case you thought it was just limited to Elon Musk, by the way, oh, no. You'll notice who you never hear on that list, though. Ain't gonna be nothing look like us on that list. No way. These other folks here are being set up, from the smallest white businesses to the largest multinationals. In case you all did not know, you name it, and they're giving them the money to do it. And by the way, that also includes other companies. Rivian, Lucid. I can go down the list. There's a bunch of white companies out there, so-called tech firms. Remember Sam Bankman-Fried? Should I keep going? A bunch of stuff that if it was a black person, they would have investigated them fully. He never would have been able to get out of the building with that con job. And yet when they show up, they're being given whatever they want. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? And they got you sitting up here repeating that they did it on their own. They did it through some sort of hard work ethic. Does Elon Musk look like he can pay attention, damn me, long enough to spell the word rocket? What? No. So when we talk to these people and whatnot, we make it very clear to them, hey, don't talk to us like no damn dummy. You sitting up here handing Elon Musk $20 billion without batting an eye. Mercedes, BMW, Volkswagen, Toyota, TSMC, Intel. You giving them hundreds of billions of dollars without batting an eye. Brothers and sisters from around the world, what I'm trying to tell you is that if you add up how much they have given just these companies and just the richest of the white men, do you understand that when you get done, you easily could have given 10% of black society $1 million each? Damn! You want to know where our reparations money went? That's where it went. They're not stupid. They're not dumb. That's where it went. They've witnessed us. They have witnessed the genius. They've witnessed our ability to, despite the odds against us, to still excel. Whenever we open up an opportunity, we're always smoking them. They're like, oh, hell no, you got to keep them Negroes down. You can't let them get one step in. You got to get them down. You got to make sure they don't have anything. They are terrified to death of what would happen if you were properly funded. You got dreams, you got an idea, and if you were actually properly funded, it's like, oh, hell no. No! Make sure they don't get anything. And then the damn me class clown, Elon Musk, shows up, who is, by the way, him and Donald Trump, bad hair, bad English, bad manners, bad business. They show up, and then all of a sudden, you're supposed to be sitting up here acting like they're coming down from Mount Sinai. And I'm not saying that everybody would do fantastic at it. What I am saying is that we would be a whole lot more competitive than this other stuff you see out there. I've already covered all this with Uber. I covered this with Uber, that they were allowed to break the law everywhere they went. Need I remind you, Uber was allowed to break the law everywhere they went. I'm reminding you of the lesson that Dr. King told when he said what the white immigrants were given. They were not just given resources you were not given. They were given powers you were not given. They were given exemption from the law. You were given targeting and oppression by the law, and they were given outright exemption from it. Uber was an illegal operation, and in many cases still is, by the way. What? Y'all do realize that in many places Uber is actually still technically illegal. They're still operating, but they're technically illegal. The American agricultural industry, I already explained to you all that there's a direct pipeline from the Mexican cartels to the Mexican coyotes to the human traffickers who bring those folk up here to the farms and the meatpacking plants and the industrial centers. All these white men who own these companies, these white contractors, house builders, freeway contractors who employ the illegals. There's the reparations money right there. Those are white men who are being exempt from the law, not at the federal level, but the federal, state, and local level. They are exempt from the law. You, however, if you're black and you don't have your hairstylist license, damn! Oh, they're going to come shut you down if you don't have your hairstylist license. And meanwhile, the white men are allowed to have 100-acre farms filled to overflowing with illegal labor. If you're a black car mechanic, you better have all your paperwork together. They're going to come shut your shop down. If you're a black restaurant, here comes the Department of Health. Well, how in the hell is it some white folk can sit up here and have hundreds of acres of land with illegals working on it and ain't nobody doing nothing? Nobody. Oh, you're exempt from the law. Well, how much money could black folk make if we were given millions of dollars and were exempt from the law? I'm not talking about the international level. I'm just talking about at the state or the local or county level. At the city or county level, how much more could you get done if you were exempt from the law? You don't have to comply with anything. Employment law, tax law, social security law, regulations, human rights, OSHA, occupational safety and health. You don't have to comply with none of that. You can just get right to it and here you go. Oh, you're exempt from the minimum wage laws? What? Oh, you're exempt from the minimum wage laws? I mean, folks, they've gone way past what Dr. King was talking about they were doing when they set up the white immigrants back in the 19th century under the Homestead Act. They've gone way beyond that. They've gone way beyond just here's some land and a donkey and some education on farming. It's like, by the way, okay, go ahead and set up shop and you can bring illegals into the country and put them to work and don't worry. And anybody going to ask any questions about it? Meanwhile, the turkey leg hut has the city and state breathing down its neck. Your black businesses in Atlanta, your so-called black Mecca, and yet they got the city council and the government breathing down their necks. You got folk there who aren't even supposed to be in the country, and nobody's breathing down the necks of the white men who are recruiting them and got them standing there. But if you're a black business, all of a sudden here comes the government breathing down your neck. Hey, was your paperwork together? Why, there's some regulation that you're violating. So in other words, you're not going to be able to be a viable business unless you are ignored. We make a law that basically outlaws every business, so you can't really operate as a business unless we are willing to ignore laws and let you operate as a business. But when you're black, all of a sudden, don't worry, there's a regulation in here that gets you. That's what Dr. King was teaching us about, and if the white media apparatus had been talking about that for the last 6 decades, the conversation we're having today would be radically different if that were the part that they were repeating over and over again, because then we would put it in this context because you see this stuff happen all the time everywhere you are. And it just seems like we're seeing it for the first time, or we're just noticing it for the first time, or we're just actually being able to acknowledge it for the first time. It's been going on the whole time. It's been going on the whole damn time. Dr. King talked about it, and it was talked about by Booker T. Washington and other folk before then. It's been going on. And they make sure that they don't discuss it. And then if you look to the old dead black media, they say nothing. Joy Reid is going to say nothing. None of these other folk are going to say anything. You are not going to turn on your televisions or your radios and see the white supremacist corporate media apparatus talking about mass incarcerating white people who break the law. For those of us who were there in the 80s and 90s when the crack cocaine epidemic popped off, all of your so-called liberal networks were big about being tough on crime and arrest every damn body. Now that it's time to mass arrest white people for the opioid crisis, all of a sudden now let's legalize drugs everywhere. Legalize drugs everywhere. Well, I'll be damned. That wasn't the attitude you had when you were able to target us. Now it's your turn, and oh, here comes I'm white and I say so like a son of a gun. You are exempt from the drug laws. Folks, let me remind you one more time. That's making white people exempt from the drug laws. They did not legalize drugs in Maine. They didn't legalize drugs in Connecticut. They didn't legalize drugs in New Hampshire. I've been to all of those places. They didn't legalize those drugs. They just said, wait a minute, if you come across some white folk zoned out on something, all the police officers are giving Narcan. All the police officers got that, but what they're told them, don't be arresting everybody now. Don't do that. Now, when they grabbed Freddie Gray, what? Oh, this is why we got to remember that. Now, when they grabbed Freddie Gray in Baltimore, why CNN was very quick to write a story to tell you that Freddie Gray was the son of a heroin addict and he had taken drugs himself. All of a sudden, Freddie Gray's drug use or possible drug use was relevant. All of a sudden. Now, when we talked about white folk, well, that doesn't matter. And then they spun on a dime when they were talking about Freddie Gray. You know about them drugs now. I thought we weren't worried about drugs anymore. Shut up, nigga. We white and we say so. That does not mean that we will not be able to push the issue. Please don't be deceived about that. That does not mean that we will not be able to push the issue, because we have pushed the issue. The reporter who wrote that story, you ain't heard from her big fat pie-faced ass ever since. The folks who tried to get away with these things, please understand that the whole point about it now is to have the correct intellectual firepower to go fight back against them with. We are not coming to anybody talking about integration, nor are we coming to anybody talking about scholarships. We're not talking about any of that. None whatsoever. We got a whole different agenda. We got a whole different agenda. We're talking about something they were not anticipating. We are talking about building our own economy from the ground up using the methodology that they gave to themselves and that they still utilize to themselves. You just drop off the money and get the hell out of our way, which is what you don't want. You do not want to simply give us the resources and then you get the hell out of our way and we gonna do what we've always done and make it blow up. You want to sit right there and make sure you can meddle with it. Because there's the first thing. If you do get something going, they want to make sure they're close around so they can sabotage it. You go to the white side of town loitering, here come the police to come grab you up. You try to set up a black business or something like that, next thing you know, loitering is legal. All of a sudden the police, well, there's a public sidewalk. Isn't that interesting? Because every damn time we turn around, if we go on the white side of town, walking down the public street, you don't have a right to do that. But they will make sure these other folks have the right to stand around on yours. We're going to bring vagrants, homeless, criminal element, leave them right there. Well, hey, ain't y'all supposed to remove them? Because if we tried this down there in Beverly Hills on Rodeo Drive, you wouldn't even need to call the police. They already jacking us up. We don't have any civil right to walk around there. But when you setting up something, here come your agent provocateurs, here come your plants, here come your agents. And all of a sudden, the same folk who made sure you couldn't walk around in certain areas, you can't even stand on the corner in certain areas, all of a sudden your spot is overrun with them. Now, isn't that interesting? It's not interesting. It's white supremacy. It's white supremacy. And I want us to be clear about where we stand on that so that when we make our arguments, we do not back down on that. And please understand that folks are going to tell you that, oh, you can't do this and can't do that, of course, because they're scared. Please understand that. It's because they're scared. Do you realize how many black folk are sitting there listening to me right now and they are scared? They're worried. They're not really sure what to do. They're hoping it doesn't happen because they don't want to be embarrassed by something being put in their hands and then they squander it. Do you realize that's where that comes from with a lot of folk? They are worried and scared that if everybody does line up and they're given the resources, they know they don't actually know what to do with it. And rather than them hunkering down and getting gamed up on it, they're instead saying, wait, why we need all that right there? Why we need all that? Why we got to do all that? Recognize the game. They have a lot of folk who are afraid. They have a lot of folk who are afraid and a lot of people who are scared. Because in many cases here, your parents may have given you the lessons, or what usually happens. What usually happens is that people are afraid of accountability. You see, when being able to sit up and scream poverty and, oh, we ain't got it and they ain't gonna give it to us, and then they show up one day and they call you bluff. All right, Negro, here it is, right there in your lap. Well, you don't have excuses anymore. You don't have excuses anymore. That's what a lot of folk are afraid of, is waking up one day and they don't have excuses anymore. They actually got to do something. Why, your kids are going to be looking at you crazy when you tell them about that time that you got that $2 million and, well, why are we still broke then? I went to the Nike store, I went to the club. And I'm not talking about the usual stuff. The Negro don't know what to do with that. What I'm saying is that you got other folk around you and that's not their story. A whole bunch of folks know they have not prepared, and they're worried that the rest of us who are prepared, that's what they're concerned about. Let me make something very, very clear, people. Elon Musk is not a genius by any stretch of the imagination. Neither is Donald Trump, neither is Mark Zuckerberg. None of them are. The truth of the matter is that if you are intelligent enough, innovative enough, that's what makes the biggest difference. You can give somebody $1 billion. If you're more creative than they are, you're going to outmaneuver them. Their goal is to make sure you have zero. Their goal is to make sure you have zero. And it's not about everybody being able to do the same thing. Folk, please understand, if 10% of us, just 10, I didn't say 90, I didn't say 50, 10%, do you realize what a cataclysmic change that would make? Your city councils and your county commissions that are run and bought and paid for by the white supremacists, that changes when you've got a black economic base that is able to finance its own interests. That changes. That changes when that happens. We know that most of the so-called black politicians are bought and paid for by these other folk. And we know that. But knowing that is not enough. Being able to do something about it is the enough. Well, if you had a proper media apparatus, that would give you a whole lot more ability. Well, we've been denied that large measure, but we've managed to start making headway in that area as well. But when you get down to the granular level of cities and counties, that's where the rubber meets the road. Most of the places in America that are fastest growing, and I'm talking about fastest growing economically, it shouldn't be any surprise that most of the fastest growing economic areas in America are where we are. Did you notice that? The fastest growing economic areas in America are where we are. That's not accidental. It's because we are always in grind mode. We're always in hustle mode. But their goal is to keep us struggling so that we are working, but we got to put all of that work and effort in for them. And we don't actually get to a point where we can harness that effort we're putting in for them for ourselves. That's the whole goal. And when you start having different conversations and you stop pretending that these other folk were earned what they got, and then you start saying, no, I want you to give me exactly what you gave them. What you gave them over there, I want that. See, let me explain something to you. There's a reason why you're not going to get somebody like me on a Fox News or something like that, because if I show up over there, I wish they would bring somebody like me on talking about illegal aliens, because the first thing I'm going to tell them is, why is it Fox News is not discussing the necessity of mass arrests of the white businesses that are employing the illegals? Why is Tom Homan not talking about the necessity of RICO? Why is Pam Bondi out of Florida not discussing the necessity of executing RICO against all these businesses, landlords, financial institutions, industrial facilities? Why are they not discussing the necessity of exercising RICO against them? People, if the Attorney General of the United States said that she was going to be using the RICO powers against people who are employing illegals, you would see the floods stop tomorrow morning. It would stop right then, right there. It would stop tomorrow morning. It would be over just that quickly. You don't have to round up 20 million illegals. You just need to round up about 100,000 white folk. Problem solved. Now, do you notice that Fox News and Bill O'Reilly and all your right-wingers and whatnot, you notice they don't say that? The most simple and obvious solution that everybody's aware of, and yet there's no discussion about that. Now, how can you be going on for all these years and you've never said what I just said? Why is that not a daily topic of conversation? Because it's already illegal. Folks, it's already illegal. It's already criminal. You're already not supposed to be doing that. And yet there they are. Why are they having discussions about the symptoms and not tackling the actual disease or the carriers of the disease? Because if it was a bunch of black folk who owned 100 farms, they'd have been gathered us all up, seized the property, seized the equipment, sold it to white men. They would have been done that. You don't hear Roland Martin talk about that. You don't hear the old dead black media talk about that. You don't hear Joy Reid talk about that. Well, I'll be damned. They're all on the same side. You don't hear them speak about it. That tells you something. If they have an opportunity, they will. Bring up about Dr. King to put it in its proper perspective. These are things that were not discussed previously. These are conversations that we have to keep reminding ourselves that this is a pattern of behavior, that we're coming to get our check, because the same evil strategies they've employed for the last centuries, they are still doing today. Do not let them lie to you or deceive you into thinking that they pulled themselves up by any bootstraps. They earned anything. They just worked hard. They just invested in themselves. They didn't rely on nobody else. They took it out of our pockets and put it into theirs like they always do. And what we're saying is turnabout's fair play. Come here, Elon. We need to pat them pockets down. We need to pat them pockets down. And to everybody, that's what we're getting their attention about. And we are not waiting until an election year. We're waiting right after you get your asses whooped while those bruises on your backside are still red and tender. We're talking to you now while those bruises on your backside are still red and bruised and tender. We hear you screaming. It's like, by the way, that don't feel so nice now, does it? Okay, maybe we need to discuss doing something different. On my broadcast this weekend, I'll be discussing that. On my broadcast coming up this weekend, I need to see how the fallout comes from that. But on my broadcast this weekend, I will be discussing that. I'll be discussing that because today, oh boy, just letting y'all know today, old Jim Crow Joe Biden, boy, I'm telling you, they done went crazy with it today. Biden went crazy with it today on his way out the door. At the very last minute, he said, screw it all, I ain't got nothing to lose. On his way out the door, he went for it. On his way out the door, he gave pardons to General Mark Milley, Anthony Fauci, members of the January 6th committee. Oh, but it didn't just end there. If he had done that, that would have just been enough by itself. But that's not all he did. He also gave pardons to members of his family. What? No. I'm not just talking about Hunter Biden. No, folks, for those of you who did not hear today, Joe Biden gave preemptive pardons. Now, remember, preemptive means you haven't been charged with anything. You haven't been accused of anything. He's given preemptive pardons to other members of his family, not just Hunter. We got word today that Anthony Fauci, Mark Milley, we're going to give pardons to other members of Joe Biden's family, not just Hunter Biden. Now, isn't that amazing or interesting? And I just made sure that folks remember one thing. Remember, I just said it yesterday. The Democrats were hounding us and badgering us to vote for them and talking about, you better vote for us or Trump gonna get you. You better vote for us or Trump gonna get you. And remember what I said? They're not saying that because they're worried that Trump's gonna get us. They're saying that because they're scared that Trump is gonna get them. They're not saying this for our benefit. They're saying it for their own. And I didn't even make it 12 hours before Biden proved me right. We didn't make it 12 hours because I figured something like that was coming. And sure enough, it was. He just had to be so blatant, so over the top with it, so egregious. And by the way, yeah, this was all about you getting us to do your dirty work. Well, if we can prod black folk to come vote for us, then they can knock Trump off for us, and we won't have to do something so blatant in front of everybody. So if black folk prevent him from getting in the White House, we won't have to do the dirty work ourselves. In the chat room, sticks and poles, give me a call up on Zoom. In the chat room, sticks and poles, I'm so glad you're doing surveys. So glad you're doing that there. I'm glad to see that. Sticks and poles, go ahead and give me a holler here on Zoom. Very glad you're doing that. Very glad you're doing that there. So glad you're asking. Thank you very much for doing that. I appreciate that. I want to see something myself. There's the Zoom link for you there. The Zoom link is pinned at the top of the chat, so sticks and poles, very, very glad that you're asking that. I'm so glad you asked that. Well, you can go ahead and talk to the source himself. So glad to hear that. Very important that we make sure about these things, having this stuff on the record, very important to do. And I'm so glad that you volunteered for that, because we need to have conversations like that. So since you've asked the question, I will be more than happy to address that for you. Like Gavin Newsom in California, the Democrats were hoping that we would do the dirty work for them and they could slither off into the sunset. They were hoping that we would cover for Biden, that we would knock Trump off so Biden wouldn't have to get his hands dirty and do it in the open. They were hoping that that was going to occur, that we would make sure that they wouldn't be held accountable for anything, or at least that it would be a two-way shootout. And we're like, you know what, we're going to just step back. Since you're not going to do anything for us, we're going to let you and Trump sort that out with each other. We're going to let you and Trump sort that out with each other. Now, isn't that very interesting? We stepped back and told them, you know what, why don't y'all go ahead and handle that? Whatever y'all got going on, why don't y'all handle that yourselves? Next thing you know, folks stop talking about us, and I'll be damned. They're like, ooh, hell, it's going to be a rough ride. You damn right. You're damn right it will be. Since you ain't handling nothing, you ain't kicking nothing down, we ain't kicking nothing up. They got a lot to go. They have a lot of soul searching that they need to do over there. Whole lot of soul searching they need to do over there. Are preemptive pardons legal? Yes. Yes, they are. And the Supreme Court has ruled on that decades ago. But for anybody asking, is it legal? Yes. Is it scummy as hell? Absolutely. But is it legal? Yes. Yes, it is. The real thing about it is, I mean, it tells you a lot. It tells you a lot. Folks who are sitting up here trying to wag the finger at you and whatnot, folks, I'm glad about all this. Let all the rats and all the dogs have to have their day. Let them all have to come out and show what they really are. You can't be handing out pardons to every damn body you just had Thanksgiving dinner with, and you don't come from a damn crooked, underhanded ass family. So when you got to do it this openly and this blatantly, it's like, yeah, dude, that's it. They can't say anything to Trump now. What are you going to say to him now? What are you going to say to him? How are you going to be the moral authority? If you were the good righteous folk there, you would sit there and let Trump expose himself. Let him sit up here and try to indict the whole administration after the fact. It's like, okay, that would be the damn clown show there. Nah, if you're trying to cut it off, it's because, well, you know, we might have did some things we shouldn't have there, actually. The other thing is, by the way, I don't want to do too much of a peek into this. By the way, Mary, I'm not really sure what you mean. Trump would be that scummy. I don't know what you mean by that, Mary. We need some clarification. Why don't you clarify what that means for us, Mary? Let me explain something to y'all. You know how this happens? I don't want to get too deep into this because I really want to cover this weekend because I need to see exactly. I don't think we've heard the whole list of folk that he's pardoned yet or whatever. Still waiting for that whole list, plus some things from the inauguration. So gonna have a full plate this weekend. But I do want to remind you of one more thing. Folks, you got to understand how this stuff works. How it works is that, like I explained to you before, you get one person to flip. You get one person to flip, next thing you know, everybody else start flipping. They go grab Anthony Fauci's little 3 apples high-built ass and let Rand Paul get a hold of him like, yeah, I'm about to give you the business. Oh, we about to give you the business. Next thing you know, Fauci starts looking for somebody to roll on. Mary needs to give me a call up on Zoom. So glad you said that, Mary. I need details. Mary needs to give me a call up on Zoom. I need you to give me some details. Can you fill me in? I need you to fill me in, Mary. Mary says something right there, so I need details, Mary. So holla at me on, go ahead and hit the button on Zoom. I need details. I need details. So when you grab one person and they flip, you grab one person and they flip, next thing you know, it's like the first 48. You know how it is. It's like the first 48. You grab that Negro, you get him in that room. Oh, you let him sit for a little while. It's cold up in there. You didn't let him bring a hoodie with him. You left him in there for a few hours. Now he done got hungry. So next thing you know, old Fauci is feeling the heat. He's like, oh, they talking about throwing football numbers at you. They're talking about public hearings. Oh, you don't know what's about to go down. That's when you start looking for somebody to flip on. You know Fauci, he's got no scruples. I heard you want Biden now. I'm sure we can work out something. This wasn't all my idea. The truth is, it wasn't all my idea. I talked to Biden. Y'all know how that goes. He'll be sitting there chewing on a double cheeseburger. It wasn't just me. Kamala Harris was on the phone with us. Y'all know how that goes. You grab one of them, you tell him, look here, you can hold this 50 years. Oh, he's like, oh, no. I can't do no time. So next thing you know, he started, I know who y'all really want. You don't really want me. I know who you really want. You really want Biden. Well, I got something on him. Next thing you know, y'all know how that goes. You're sitting in that interrogation room. They talk about federal prisons are a country club. Look here, nigga, you ain't never been to a country club that told you we're as nice as the feds are. What? Somebody tell me one resort you've ever been to that says our accommodations are comparable to federal prison. Tell me one resort, cruise line, vacation destination that told you we're better than the federal pen. We have nicer beds than Leavenworth. Tell me where you been when you seen that happen. It's a country club. It's a country club compared to the damn county jail. You have never been anywhere that's up here and told you, this is a 5-star resort here. You ain't seen nothing like that. Nothing. You've never heard anybody say that. No person, no corporation. You ain't never heard those words in your life. They're like, nigga, this is better than the Chinese prison. We'll give you that. But, yeah, you gonna be sitting here for a few decades. I'll be damned. People, if I let you make your own room to stay in for 5 decades, you lose your damn mind. No, as soon as they say, okay, you can hold this 20 years, right? Oh, no. Look, let me tell you about the rest of the stuff that you didn't know was on Hunter Biden's laptop. So yeah, folks, when that's y'all remember when George W. Bush left office, Scooter Libby got sentenced to prison. They said, now we know Bush is not about to commute his sentence and get him off. Man, Bush is like, look here, y'all know what happened. Scooter Libby made that phone call. Hey, look, bruh. I ain't come up with this idea by my damn self. Hey, if I'm going to jail, we all going to jail. I suggest you make something happen. This wouldn't be a good look, Scooter. I don't give a damn. Me being in jail ain't a good look. And you being next to me gonna be a worse one. So whatever you got to do, good look, bad look, whatever, you better get me up out of this, or I'm gonna get myself out of it. Y'all know that right there. Scooter Libby, another little short dude. Okay, he'll be sitting there in Congress, in front of Congress, eating a Chipotle burrito. Sitting up here naming names and every damn thing else. You know that's how that goes. Scooter just made one phone call. Hey, George, look here. Either I can get off or we can get off. So what's it gonna be? You know that's the way that went down. He's like, I'll be down. I'm not like them Nixon niggas. Them G. Gordon Liddy and the rest of them who went to prison. And Scooter Libby's like, I ain't like them Nixon niggas. No. Not me. Not me. I can go home or we can do time. But I'm not going to do it by myself. Not when I'm following your damn directions. But, well, you know, Scooter, you know, as commander-in-chief, you got, you know, your job is to follow on the sword for the commander-in-chief. You know, it's the time-honored tradition of men and administrations. And, man, look here, you can take that damn sword and follow on it your damn self. And you know Biden don't have no stand-up people around him. He couldn't keep Nancy Pelosi on board. He has no stand-up people. So, yes, he got to pardon half the damn government. Because it wasn't just his family. It was a bunch of people at the Justice Department, a bunch of other folk there. He's had to give blanket pardons to a whole bunch of folk. Yeah, because Trump gonna knock on one or two doors. Hey, get your ass on out here. Yeah, you was hoping we wasn't coming. We coming. And you know how this goes. It's like, hey, wait a minute now. I know what you came for. I got something you might want to hear. Before you start throwing time at me, I got something you might want to hear. So that's the reason you seeing that thrown around right there. And everybody wants to point at us, and they wanted us to be their crash dummies to get them off the hook so that he wouldn't have to do something so clumsy and so blatant and so egregious. So at this point right now, Joe Biden can't even show up for a damn birthday party. At this point right now, he can't even show himself at a kindergarten graduation. And we were supposed to prevent that from happening, and we didn't. And we let everybody know why that is. And at the end of the day, the reason why that is because y'all have not cut the check. And you played stupid and you played dumb. Well, this time we playing dumb along with you. We said cut the check. You said what check? We said all right. And you said, hey, have y'all voted? And we said what vote? We don't know nothing about no vote. Elizabeth Warren, vote for what? Vote for what? No, let Trump come get all your asses. You know them buses they bring the illegals on? Yeah, they can come load all y'all bastards up on that one. When y'all get the Democrats love the illegals. As soon as the illegals get off the bus, it's like, hey, Nancy Pelosi, get your ass on up in there. Come on, just let me help hold your hands so you can get your leg on up on this step. Yeah, don't worry, one step. Just remember, take it one at a time. Right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot. All right, walk down the aisle to the back. It has a bathroom on the bus. I know you're kind of nervous, but yeah. Yeah. Dr. Fauci, get your ass up on the bus here. Come on, here you go. Don't worry, I know you done had your shots, so come on. Yeah, that's where we at. Trump gonna get us. What you mean gonna get us? Who is us? The only name I heard him say was yours. He didn't say, I'm coming for Jason Black. I didn't hear that. I didn't hear that one. I bet you that damn check we were talking about now seems pretty damn cheap in comparison, doesn't it? Ignoring Dr. King and Malcolm X and Huey Newton. You told yourself that it was going to be a small bill to pay. I bet you that bill is looking pretty damn steep now. You thought stalling would make life easier. I bet you're wishing you'd done something a little bit different now. But that's okay. Because what you're counting on is, now, here's what they're counting on, folks. What they're counting on is that Trump is going to get less popular in the next 2 years. Well, you know what? That is a possibility. But you know what else is one? It's also possible that Trump is able to organize that clown car that he calls a Republican Party. It is possible that he can put down enough of the dissidents and kick enough of them into line that they hold on to everything in 2026. And that will just, or maybe expand their margins. Now, wouldn't that be something? A 4 straight year reign of terror in control of all 3 branches of government. Now, isn't that a nightmare scenario for the Democrats who were thinking that they'll just be in the wilderness for 2 years? If he's able to hold on to things and hold on to their majority in 2026. That guy McFly, he was able to organize a presidential campaign not once but twice. Damn! So, there's that. He didn't have to manage the casino. He just needed to own it. So, he managed the presidential campaign not once but twice. That went pretty well 2 months ago. That's going pretty good. So, you got a choice between the casino and the presidency. That's not really much of a choice which one you'd rather have. So, just thought I'd throw that out there. But folks, if he gets the opportunity to do that, if that starts coming together for him, oh man. Oh, it's going to be rough out there for some folks for the next 4 years. If we can make it to the next 2 years, that's assuming he doesn't make any huge mistakes. And that's assuming that you Democrats get more popular than you already are, which is going to be a daunting task. But boy, that's a lot of ground to cover. All of a sudden, when we show up talking about them tangibles, I got a feeling some folks' ears are going to be a little softer. I didn't say they're going to roll over for us right now. I didn't say that, but it's like, we just doing a check-in, y'all. Hey, you know them tangibles we've been talking about for 100 years and really been stomping on for the last 10, and yeah, 2016, we let Trump in the first time because you was talking all crazy and you thought 2020 was going to be the new way and you found out, oh, hell no, it can get a whole lot worse. Like, yeah, can we ready to talk about them tangibles? Oh, you're not ready to talk about that yet? Oh, you still not sure we can get anything done? Okay, we'll check back with you in 2024. We're going to take a vacation from voting for a little bit. Yeah, Trump white supremacists, we get it. Because you looking really white supremacist too. So, we're going to take a break. You're going to take a break from figuring out what reparations is and tangibles. You don't want to discuss tangibles. I don't want to discuss voting. So, good luck on 2026 and 2028. Yeah, because your new voter base you thought you was going to bring in, he getting ready to bounce all of them out. So, yeah, good luck on that. And good luck with your indictment, Fannie Willis. We'll check back on you in a little bit. If you're the person who's even here to talk to, by the way. But please understand, from this day forward, we do not want to discuss politics in any way that is not entwined with tangibles, period, point blank, end of discussion. Talking about feel-good stuff, and worst of all, talking about stuff that ain't even got nothing to do with us. Talking about stuff that doesn't even have anything to do with us. Like black folk are here to vote for what everybody else wants. There's the biggest damn insult in the world, that black folk gonna vote for what everybody else wants. Here, you need to make sure you vote for everybody else. You know, other folks need something. D.L. Hughley said that he thinks about folk other than himself. I'm like, okay, well, tell that nigga go ahead and think about anything other than himself. We gonna take care of us. Oh, it's gonna be a hell of a time. Cut the check was not just a cute slogan. It's a way of life. It's a way of life. And everybody we talk to now, don't worry. Everybody already got the message. They got the message years ago. They just want to see how serious we are about it. So as soon as we pull up, hey, them tangibles. Oh, well, you know, I ain't really sure about that right there. It's, okay, well, we'll leave you alone for a little bit, though. Well, you know, in November, we gonna holler. It's like, oh, we don't know who he is. Just remember that. There's going to be a whole bunch of folks getting a rude-ass wake-up call. They already got it once. Don't worry. If Trump throws a couple of indictments and they don't see any of us take to the damn streets, that'll get their attention too, by the way. If Alvin Bragg, Letitia James, Fannie Willis, if somebody catch a fade and they don't see us getting all upset and they don't see any of us taking to the streets and they don't see that happening, oh, that'll get their attention. That'll get their attention too. It's like, well, don't worry, my folks gonna ride for me. Okay, well, get them 3 little ladies at the church, see if they can come holler for you. It's a new day. It's a new day, and we have looked into Dr. King and identified and outlined the real Dr. King. And it turned out the real Dr. King was talking just like us. No wonder they attempted to bury it and hide it. No wonder they attempted to do that, but it's too late. And just like they have abandoned Dr. King because they can no longer deceive or fool anybody with it, when it comes to our agenda, it will be the same thing. Oh, we're not disappearing. Please understand that. We are not disappearing at all. We're making sure that when we speak to these folks now, there is a code and there is an agenda, and we are just getting started. We are just getting started. We're going to go ahead and wrap things up here tonight. I want to thank everyone who has contributed toward tonight's program on PayPal, Super Chat, Venmo. Shout out here to my man, Mr. Richburg. Thank you very much for your support. To Andrew L. Shout out here to Pamela Green. Also, Black Voltron Reloaded. The code leads. Thank you very much for your support as well here. Big shout out here to Quan Chi.
I told you all that I was the greatest of all time. I told you today I'm still the greatest of all time.
And thank you to all of you tuned in here tonight. We got some cold fronts that are coming in across places. We got cold fronts. We got fires. We got all kinds of things happening here. So this week here, I might try to make out a little bit more time to hold court with the family on these things. Might make a little bit more time for that. So keep your eyes and your ears open. I want to thank everyone who has tuned in to tonight's program, live or recorded. Thank you for liking, subscribing, and sharing. And this concludes tonight's broadcast of the Black Channel. I am your host, your brother, your humble servant, the Black Authority. And until next time, my brothers and my sisters from around the world, remember, Black is the future, and the future is uncompromising.